I want to talk about the specific heat lab write-up, and it will be due when you take the final exam. Okay. It will be due when you take the final exam.
That's a week from today.
So for you guys, yes, next week. Good. Okay. Now, the write-up should be fairly simple. Okay. The majority of this write-up will be the calculations. All right. And it's the same stuff that we've been doing with the specific heat type calculations. So. Yeah, this would be an individual. Okay. All right. So, oh, here we go. So you have all your data. Okay. And this is, I'm pretty sure it's a pretty intensive. I can't remember how much. Does anybody have the rubric right offhand? That was like 8 or 9 points for the calculations. Might even be worth a third. Yeah, how much is the calculations for the specific heat? 8? 8? Okay. All right, so the calculations, pretty thorough. And what I have at the bottom here, for each trial, you have 4 trials. For each trial, I want you to make up a table, just like this, and do the calculation. I want you to find the specific heat for each trial. Now, even though your difference in the temperatures might be the same for the 2 trials, you're still doing the same calculation. All right. So that's how I'm going to award those points. So do show the table, do show the calculation, and that's what the calculation is talking about here. And it's just like the homework.
So you're going to have 4 of those tables.
Correct. 4 tables, 4 sets of calculations for each trial. So you have 2 metals, 2 trials for each metal. Okay. So you have a total of 4 calculations total.
Wait, so we have to do that on the computer?
No. You'll do the calculations by hand. Neatly organize it, label everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so be neat on that. Yeah, don't do it on the computer. You're solving for the specific heat of the unknown metal. In other words, back here, what's our purpose? To determine the specific heat. Actually, I told you what the metals were. Okay, so.
What's the specific heat of water?
Still 4.184. Yeah. All right, so you'll do that. And then in your discussion, do use the template again. In your conclusions, I want you to explain why having different amounts of water in the calorimeter would affect the delta T after adding the metal. And I'll give you a heads up. Do a calculation. How much water did you have in the calorimeter? Anybody remember? 50. Good. So do a calculation where you had only 25 milliliters of water as opposed to 75 milliliters of water. Okay? That right there will tell you how your delta T will be affected. Okay? And then list 2 experimental errors that occurred in the slab. The first one was the most obvious. I had everybody make this note on the observation. When you transferred the metal from the boiling water to the calorimeter, what did you observe? Steam. What does that mean? Losing what? Heat. Very good. So when you do your specific heat calculation for your metal, the heat won't all be there. That's okay. That's a source of error. Okay. What's another source of error? Now again, make sure you explain why that's a source of error. Be specific on that. What's another source of error that could have occurred?
When you did every trial, and there's still a little bit of water left in the thing. And then
What do you mean in the thing?
There's still some water left in the calorimeter thing. In the
But we weighed it out, didn't we? Yeah, so we took that into account.
Not waiting enough time for the thermometer to go all the way back to where it started.
What do you mean?
Because like the thermometer was always still like a little bit higher than like room temperature.
Okay.
Would that be
How about the calibration of the thermometer?
I don't know if that
How many of you had water boil at 93 degrees?
Ours
Yeah,
was
there were
90.
some that was, I looked at it, and I thought I even saw one that was at 90.
That was ours.
So the way that the thermometer is calibrated, and again, they're not the digital thermometers. These are the old school, let's get it from the cheapest company here type deal. So the calibration on that might not be right. Some of you did have water boiled at 100 degrees. Some of you didn't. Most of you didn't. So talk about the thermometer, how it's not as accurate as it could be. Well, where would that affect? Okay. So again, I just gave you your two sources of error. Just make sure you explain it. All right. It's not a really intensive type of write-up. Again, your main focus is right here on the calculations. Okay. So this is all I want you to explain in your write-up, and you can turn that in at any time between now and the final exam. Okay.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah.
And you said there's 4 calculations, right?
There should be 4 separate sets of calculations for each trial. Okay. And if you didn't know what metal you had there, look at your lab partner. Okay. Because I thought I went around and told everybody what metals they had. Okay. Now I'm not asking you to do a percent air type deal, because that would be really bad. And again, if you want to turn that in at any point, that would be awesome.
That's due Monday.
It's due when you take the final exam.
Thursday.
Yeah. So when you walk in for the final, you'll hand me your lab.